So, good morning. We're here with another wonderful guest today on our podcast. And we met our guest originally through Instagram, had some back and forth messages, and he's been coming out of the fog with us on our podcast. So, Jon Stautzenberger, welcome.
Hey, everybody.
Okay. For being here, Jon.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, we're really happy to have you. And so we kind of just dig right in. What's your story and why are you here?
Right. My story. Okay. So, way back it starts. No, I always knew I was adopted. It's in what I do for a living, people, when they find out you're adopted, they come to you for advice. And, so one point, probably in my 40s, I went back to went to my adoptive parents and I was like, so how did you tell me? And they were like, well, we don't remember. I'm like, oh, okay, that's a lot of help. But it was one of those things that part of the narrative I just always knew. Didn't give a lot of thought to it as a little kid. And then as a teenager, there were some events and things going on in life. And I knew this. So I knew I was local. I'm from San Antonio, Texas. I knew I was born in Downtown Baptist Hospital. And my mom had seen a couple of papers, private adoption, so local domestic private adoption, and sort of had a name to go on my birth mother. And she thought she had seen some information about what area of town she lived in. And so I sort of knew that. And so I grew up on the same side of town as to where this information was. And so as a teenager, I didn't give a lot of thought about, the Dr. Seuss, are you my mommy? I didn't think a lot about that, but I did wonder, because I was an only kid, did I have siblings? And so it was one of those as a teenager in high school, you sort of looked around and you're like, could it, so I did wonder that, but didn't give a whole lot more thought to it.
Not to interrupt, but how did your parents come to adopt you?
Oh man. Okay. So they had a next door neighbor that was a lawyer. And for some reason, and I just heard this part just within the last few months, actually, I didn't know the details of this. My dad had some problem with the car he bought, and he, I guess, before there were lemon laws and stuff. And so he went to this next door neighbor's office to, get some advice on what to do about this car that he had purchased and some problems. And after they settled, and talked all that, they're sitting there in his office, and this lawyer goes, "Hey, by the way, you know anybody wanting to adopt?"
Wow.
Yeah, my parents have been married.
That's the baby business.
Yeah, and there you have it, right? So my parents have been married about 8 years and could not have children. And they looked at each other going, yeah, us.
So what was did he have a particular baby, or was he just part of the business of adoption?
No, it was me.
Okay.
It was, so my mom, my biological mom, from what I have since heard, had 6 weeks to go before the due date, before I was born. And so he, from what I have learned now, after the fact, he was representing her family. And then there was a lawyer that was representing my dad's family. And so I don't know if he was part of the industry or not. I don't know.
So her parents went to an attorney to help the situation at their home. Mm-hmm.
Yes. That's
just bizarre to me. I'm sorry, but like car sales to.
Yeah. The sales. It's sales. What can you say?
Yeah. I mean, yes, I can't argue. You're exactly right. It's as I heard that part of the story, like I said, within the last few months, you still have these light bulb moments of going, wait, what? Really? So it's that's been interesting. So like most adoptees, you have that really big moment when you're expecting your first child. And so that was so, I'd had those moments of thinking about them, but then there we are, we're pregnant with my wife is pregnant. I can't take any credit, right? And we go to that first OBGYN appointment, and they hand you the old, medical history thing, and you're sitting there going, and NA, not applicable, adopted. And that was that first big moment of like, whoa. So this is fall of 1998, somewhere in 1998. And, internet's young at the time. And so you go there are forums, you remember the old forums and stuff, and there are a few registries. And so I started looking into them. I put what information I had. I knew where I was born, or, we think we know where we were born and when I was born and all that. And I put that out there, and I knew I didn't have the finances to try the legal aspect. So, by the way, I'm from Texas, and the Texas adoption laws, as far as the sealed original birth certificates, are sealed.
Yeah.
It's a tough one. And so I knew I wasn't going to be able to fight that journey. So I just sort of gave up. So with that, fast forward to 2019, 2020, as Ancestry and 23andMe and things like that are growing, you start seeing more of these adoption reunion stories, and on USA Today or whatever the case may be. And I started reading some of these, and I started thinking, yeah, okay, maybe. Now, please realize I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Okay, I'm not. Please trust me, because I always feel like I sound a little crazy. And I was like, DNA, once you put that out there, who knows how that will be used against you in the future? Insurance, pre-existing conditions, whatever the case. I'm like, I'm not doing that. Then I read this one adoption reunion story, and this lady about my age had through this reconnected, found her birth mom and dad. And through that, they were either divorced. I think one was a widow, and they reconnected and got married. And you read in this story going, well, maybe it's more than just about me. I'd like to know medical history, but maybe this is something that, who knows where they are in life. How can I help them?
You start to have a deeper cause with it.
Yes, sure. Definitely. Beyond just you and what you need, you're looking at it bigger picture, or at least I was. And so I thought, okay, fine. For me, it's always a practice what you preach. And so my faith is very important to me. And there is a Bible verse in 1 Timothy, and it talks about God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and self-control. All right, Lord, fine. Practice what you preach. I won't be afraid. All right, let's do this DNA thing. So, I researched them all, what's the best one for what I'm trying to accomplish. And I landed on Ancestry just because it had the larger database. And so, how they run those discounts.
Specials.
The specials. Yes. And this was May of 2021. So this is last year. And the Mother's Day special comes up, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. And, you got that button, you're ready to click. I couldn't do it. I freaked out. I was like, oh, I don't know about this. I'm not sure all of what I was afraid of, what I wouldn't find or what I would find. So I didn't order it. And I'm like, oh, and so I started to regret it. Well, again, they run the specials, Father's Day is coming up. So that's that next special. So I'm like, okay, fine, I'll do it.
And you're a father now. With how many kids do you have?
I have 3 sons.
Three sons.
Yes, 22, 21, and 19.
So this affects them as well.
Very much so. Very much so. So I ordered the thing, the Father's Day special. It comes in, and I just stare at that little box. It sat on the counter in the kitchen right over here for 2 weeks, and I just couldn't do it. I again, freaking out a little bit. And so my wife, she's like, Jon, so I was teaching school at the time. So I had the summer off, and she goes, if you don't do it now, you're going to run out of summer. Well, like usual, she's right. So you take that package, you open it up. I'm a instruction reader. I'm that guy, and I'm reading through all that stuff, and then you finally get to, okay, I guess I'm ready. I don't know if anybody out there that's listening or watching this, it's a vial about yay big. It's about yay big around, and the minute you open it up, my mouth goes,
you can't.
Just dries up. Oh my word, that was the toughest 20 minutes to fill up that little thing. But I did it.
You have a lot more invested than some people, I think. That's why.
Is that why? Because you're not supposed to drink water because it like dilutes the sample or something. Right. So, that was a rough 20 minutes filling that thing up. But I did it. I put it in the mailbox, and I'm like, all right, now great ignorance here, a lot of ignorance. If ignorance is bliss, I'm very blissful. So August the 4th, so that was in June. August the 4th, I get an email, and you grab your phone, you're looking at it and go like, oh, my results are in. Now I'm a history geek. I love history. I love Texas history. And, so my last name, as you guys know, we'll see here in the podcast, is 14 letters long. So this big, long German name. And so I've always sort of grabbed onto that German identity that is a huge part of this South Central Texas area. And so I'm like, okay, what percentage am I? Does the DNA match the long last name? And so, all right, so that's what I'm expecting. As far as finding, relatives, I thought, you had to hire, a search angel or a company or something.
You're all about the DNA at this point.
I am. I'm all about the DNA. I didn't know the other parts of it. It's very ignorant. So I go to the computer. I didn't want to look at it on my phone, and I wanted it bigger. And so I geek out on charts and graphs and things like that and percentages. I love that stuff. So I'm like, oh, this is cool. And so now, by the way, like many of you that have done Ancestry, the percentages that you are changes as the database grows. It's changed, but the initial one was 43% German. And I'm like, yes, the DNA matches the last name. I was excited about that.
What's the other?
So the other most predominant was French.
Oh, French.
Yeah. So apparently World War II, I'm conflicted. And the French will come into play. So I clicked that, and there's as many of you probably know, there's a thing, matches. And I'm like, matches? What in the world are matches? And so you click that button, it drops down and it ranks them from closest. And I have one that's ranked close relative. All right, so I click on that, and it gave, as many of you know, it gives a percentage of what relation you may be. This one said 100%.
Yeah.
My aunt, my half sibling, my niece, my grandchild, or my grandparents. I didn't know what to do with that. I'm now freaking out. I'm crying. I cry so easily nowadays. My wife, now I've called her into the room. She's staring over my shoulder at the screen, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. Now, the other thing I've learned in this adoption journey is that we are pretty good internet, I want to say researchers instead of stalkers, but we're
Stalkers. Yeah,
okay,
we talk about that often.
All right, good. And so
Sarah and I prefer the word stalker.
Oh, good, because that's the word I usually use. And people look like, oh, wait, should I be concerned? I'm like, yeah, you probably should. But anyway, so I looked this lady's name, and it was not a really unusual name, but I didn't think there'd be a lot of them. And sure enough, there were a lot of them. And I start researching, and I think I find who it is. All right, who is this person? Now, at this point, I really don't know, much about my story. And so I don't know if this person knows I exist. Spent 2 hours trying to craft, and the only way to reach them is through Ancestry. Mm-hmm. And I spent 2 hours trying to craft a brief, kind and gracious. I didn't want to rock their world, but I had to sort of push the conversation forward a little bit. So after about 2 hours, I think I have it right. I've edited it a few times, and I hit send. Now, don't know if this person is even online right now. So I had some other things I had to do, and I was sitting there in the room, and I was trying to get stuff done, but I was really, really distracted. And all of a sudden in 20 minutes, ding, computer. Okay. So I opened up this message. She responded, and the response was, first cousins. Who are your parents? I'm like, oh no, she doesn't know.
Yeah. I've been through this, and then I got ghosted. So go on.
Oh, okay. All right. So you understand. So,
it's so
all right.
crazy.
So now I got to do a second message that still trying to be kind and gracious and, push the conversation a little bit further forward. So I spent another, I don't know, probably an hour trying to, what was the second message? So I hit send, and now I know she's online. So I'm like, all right, we'll see how long it takes her to respond. And first time was 20 minutes. I know she's online. It's now been 30 minutes. And I'm like, oh no, I rocked her world. Rats. Okay. So after 30 minutes, ding, there it is. Now I'm going to look down because I always read this part. So I'm going to read the response I got from her. I'll try not to cry. I sometimes do. Oh, Jon, what a blessing your message is. You were the sole reason I put my DNA in Ancestry in hopes of meeting you one day. You are my brother's son. She lists his name. Unfortunately, he has passed away. I am one of 7 siblings, and all 6 of us would love to meet you. We all live in the San Antonio area. You have 1 half sister and 1 half brother. She then lists the aunts and uncles. And then she goes, I will let everyone know about you. We have all been waiting for this day. We would love to meet you. I'm sorry for the delayed response. I had to call my sister and cry. God is good, and we are feeling very blessed. Love, Aunt Denise.
That's
Oh,
beautiful.
John.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. It's beautiful. And
So
so,
that's
this is your biological father's side.
Yes, this is the paternal side. And so there are 3 aunts, 3 uncles, and a sister and a brother, half sister and brother. I don't like those terms, but
Yeah.
so I have a sister and a brother. So that was August the 4th.
That's my son's birthday. So that's a lucky day.
It's a wonderful day. It is one that it will always be burned into my memory.
And so he knew that you were adopted out. He was part of
So
that.
yes, so the whole, yes. So my father, you mean?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. So my father knew I existed. From what I hear now, being in reunion for 9 months, is that they had dated in high school. The storyline that I would sort of given growing up was that they were like 15 and 16. And so with that, have you guys built that story in your head of what was happening in that moment and all that? And so I built an erroneous storyline. They were actually 19 and 18. She was a year older. They had dated through high school. So she had been out for a year. He had just graduated. And I think they were progressing forward. Then me. And what I've been told from both sides is that things were going all right, as all right as in, unexpected out of wedlock, pregnancy in 1968. But then the grandfathers got involved. And when that happened, things went poorly at that point. I don't know all the details of that. That's just, little tidbits I'm picking up here.
And that's probably how the lawyer came in for her family. Like she was kind of, I mean, you might know and tell us, but was she told to then give you up for adoption, or?
I don't know those details yet. I'm not sure. What I do know is that she was, I say I know. So real quick, I'm in reunion with the paternal side. Well, hold that thought. So we meet 10 days later. Now, by the way, that was like being a 10-year-old on Christmas Eve for 10 consecutive days. The adrenaline was just crazy, but we all meet, the aunts, the uncles, my brother and my sister. Glorious night. It was a blast. They're amazing. And while I'm sitting there around a large table at one of my aunt's houses, oh, by the way, they're all local. We have probably passed each other dozens of times in our life.
I was going to ask that. I'm sure you've all intersected in schools and.
My sister lives just down the road. There was, the first church that my wife and I were on staff at after school, after college, was over Southeast Bexar County. And there was this favorite restaurant that we always like to eat out after church and hang out at. I have since found that was my uncle's restaurant. So I probably, paid my ticket to him. He probably, my cousin probably brought the food to me. I mean, small world moments.
Small world.
All over. So San Antonio is the biggest small town you'll ever live in. And so a ton of small world moments. But anyway, we're sitting there that very first night we met. And one of my aunts, she goes, well, do you know who your mom is? Well, I had found online the graduating classes of the high school that they went to for both my mom I knew that she had graduated the year before. So I found his graduating class, found his name on the roster, everything. His name's Tommy. And then I found her roster the year before, or I found her class. And I was searching based upon what my mom had said she thought, that name that she saw. And then in one of the text messages, one of my aunts between meeting, she had mentioned a name. And so that really narrowed down my focus. So we're in that, and she goes, do you know? And I said, I don't, but I think I know. And she goes, well, who do you think it is? And I gave the name, and she goes, that's who it is. Would you like to meet him or, contact? At that point, I'm like, hey, tonight's about us. Yes, I do, but she just started texting.
Oh my gosh. So they're in touch?
Well, so the high school that they graduated from, they all still hang out together, even though they're in their their early 70s.
Yeah.
They all still hang out together pretty much nonstop. In fact, their high school crowd, the small world moments, I know a lot of them. I've worked, been in the same place of employment with some of them. It's small world moments. So she started, now I know this after the fact.
She started texting your mom?
She texted another high school friend that still stays in touch with my mom. So there's a texting telephone game going on. And so while sitting there, it eventually gets back to me. Word has gotten to her, and word's now gotten back to me that she doesn't want to meet.
Mm.
So
just while you're sitting there at dinner?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. Meeting them for the first time with
that's a lot.
A house full of people. I always joke for my poor wife. She went from being married to an only kid from a very small family in a matter of 3 hours to a guy with 2 siblings from a really large, tight family. So it was quite the journey. But yes, that all happened within that evening.
And really quick, were you alone in the, or did your wife come and your boys?
No, my sons were not with me that first night, but my wife, thank goodness, was with me.
Okay.
She's been amazing in all of this.
So that must have been a bit of a blow to hear she didn't want to meet you, and you're having to process that information with these people you just met.
That's a lot.
It was, but I sort of compartmentalized and put that to the side because I was processing all of this other
in front of you.
Yeah. And so my father, Tommy, had passed away when I was 15. So I never got
How did he pass away? I was going to ask that.
So I think it's you, Louise, that your mom passed away, right? In an accident?
Yes.
Okay.
Counting.
Okay. And so it was in a construction accident with a dump truck. And it is, yeah. I did some old newspaper searches and found an article.
Poor guy.
And yeah, it was, and my brother and my sister were little at the time. I've talked to my brother about it just a little bit and he shared a little of that day with me when we were at lunch not too long ago. So I never got a chance to meet him. So I feel guilty for saying this, that it made that first meeting a little easier without that awkwardness of.
I had the same thing. I had, you're meeting the family, not the parent.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little diffusion there.
It was. Did you feel like in the moment that made it easier for you?
Yes. Well, it was so overwhelming as it was, it would have been even more overwhelming for sure.
Yeah. So I had the same experience with you. So now from that though, now there's that, okay, man, I never got a chance to know him and just never got that opportunity. Yeah. So that sank in a little bit later on as I, had time to try to process all the information that was just, coming at you.
And really quick, I know I keep interrupting you, but your adopted parents, it sounds like your mom was pretty open with you. Were they on this journey too with you, or how do they feel about, like, what do they know about this reunion?
Okay. So good question. So up to this point, I have not told them. I was concerned with how it would be received. So I wanted to meet them. I was on this, just, me and my wife, together. And so after meeting them, then I realized this is going to be a thing. They're a part of my life now. As you guys, know, adoptees have 4 parents. Yeah. And they have really crazy family ties. And I, from meeting them, now again, there's that adoption, reunion honeymoon, but they had given no indication that this is a temporary thing. And so I couldn't live with the secret. So I eventually had to, go over to mom and dad's house. They still live in the house I grew up in over on the south side of town, and just, had supper. It was me, my wife, and them. And all right, I got something to tell you. They're like, oh no, what's wrong? I got cancer or something. So I didn't know how to do it other than just rip the Band-Aid off. And so I sort of let them out, and they handled it really well. I was
Oh.
surprised.
Oh.
I
And
was
have they met them?
So they have met the aunts and
Ah.
uncles. So back in January, we got together for lunch. And so they have met the aunts and uncles.
Oh, that's
Because
great.
I always think that makes people more secure, once there's faces, not these strangers coming into your life. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. So far it's been good. When there's so many of them now, and there's a ton of first cousins, and first cousins once removed, and all that stuff. And as I try to share who I've met and when I met them and all these things, my mom is struggling to keep it all straight in her head, because it is a little overwhelming. She's like, hey, wait, time out, stop. Wait, just let me think about this. And so it's, I've been pondering and poring over it and writing out charts to keep it all straight. And I'm just, sort of unloading on her. So
I mean, this is really new, right? It's very new.
Very new.
So any update on your birth mother? Nothing.
So yes, a lot going on in that. So 2 months after meeting the paternal side, I had, like we all do, we're creating that family tree. And that's, now that I know her name, I'm starting to do some research and creating this family tree. And I found that she had an 11-year older sister. And from that, I found her obituary, and I found the first cousins, but I sort of hit a roadblock and I didn't know what to do with that. So I just took my aunt and I just attached her next to my mom, just as a sort of a placekeeper, so I can maybe get back to that someday. So 2 months after all of this has happened, I sit down one Sunday, football's on the TV, and I'm just waiting. My son and I are going to go somewhere. I thought I'll just do a little more, genealogical work. And I literally just open up to Ancestry, and all of a sudden, ding, message. And so this lady goes, you have so-and-so connected to your family tree. That's my grandmother. Who is she to you? So now I got the first contact on the maternal side. And so this time I'm a little more, bolder by this, time. And I was just, all right, I'm still going to be kind and gracious, but I'm just going to, put it out there. Hey, I was adopted. I believe that your grandmother is my aunt. And so put it out there, and there's that awkward delay, and you're waiting for a response. Well, I know after the fact. So she was texting her mom going, wait a second. And so so she was my first cousin once removed. So it's my first cousin's daughter. Mm-hmm. And she was, my aunt on her deathbed let my cousin know that I existed.
The 11 years older aunt.
Yes, correct. So my first cousin knew about me. I think that's the only person that knew about me, other than my aunt, but she had passed away, on my maternal side.
So this young woman is texting her aunt, who is the one who did
she's texting her mom,
her mother, who did know about you.
Yes.
From her mother.
Yes. Correct. So that was the first meeting of somebody on the maternal side. They don't live locally, but when they're in town, we've gotten together for supper. We text. We're really good friends, and they've been tremendous.
And what did they say about your mom? She's just not interested still, or?
So, well, my mom, to my knowledge, doesn't know that they know.
There hasn't been a sharing of that information. Yeah.
And I feel like I put them in a little awkward situation now. I do feel badly for that, but they've been great and supportive.
Yeah.
Do you have any siblings through your mom?
She got married later in life, and to my knowledge, did not have any other children, from what I can tell.
And does she still live near you in Texas?
So she had spent most of her time out in Houston and moved back. Ready? My grandmother is still alive. She's 104.
Wow.
I feel like this isn't ending for you, because
I feel like it's not. Yeah. The story, it's so new.
It's so new. And your biological mom, your birth mom, may really just be in shock, and not having other children may have had a lot of pain from this, obviously.
I think so. And I like to
small town opens up so many wounds. I mean,
yeah. And I try to look at it from her point of view. I do. And so
But you didn't say where she lived. We interrupted you.
I'm sorry. So she lives in the next county over, but down the same highway that I grew up on. I mean, we grew up down the same highway from her. That I mentioned that cafe after that first church that we were on staff at. It was located in Adkins, Texas. I have since found out that Adkins, Texas is named after my great-great-grandfather. Just weird, small world, strange things.
So when you were growing up in that house off the highway, she was nearby.
Yeah, she wasn't that far away. We probably, so after I was born, she moved to California to live with her sister, my aunt. And then she was there 3 years and then moved to Houston, and she spent her adult life in Houston. But my grandmother was just down the road.
It's too bad that aunt died, because she'd know a lot about what your mom went through after that. And
she would.
Yeah.
Well, I echo Louise, and I don't think this story is over. So I think you will be coming back to tell us more.
Well, so with that, I have decided this week, after some advice from some trusted friends, there's wisdom in a multitude of counselors, and I am writing a letter to my grandmother. She's 104. And I want to be kind and gracious to my mom, but she's 104 and she gave up the keys to her car, quit driving. Now it's a small town, when she was 102.
She's still got all her faculties. It's like time is on, you have very limited time.
Yeah. So I penned a letter yesterday.
Wow.
And, I think I'm going to put it in the mail this coming week.
I'd say yes.
Yeah.
Sooner than later.
I checked with my cousins to let them know this was going to happen. Again, my cousins were like, would you like me to talk? I was like, whatever you feel comfortable doing, I'm okay with. So we will see how that goes, but I'm going to put that letter in the mail and see if it gets to her. Please
let us know.
And also, Jon, when you were growing up, did you feel, I wanted to ask you this because we went through your childhood very quickly. Did you feel any sense of, like, besides just kind of I did the same thing, like in high school, kind of wandering, who's this, who's that? I wasn't an only child, but did you ever feel sort of like fish out of water, or how did you feel growing up in that way? I wanted to circle back and ask you that.
So as a little kid, no, but I don't know if that's the difference between being a little boy and a little girl. Little boys, we're just, climb a tree, fall out of it. I don't know. I didn't, as a little kid. It really wasn't until high school and in college that I started to have those understandings of fish out of water, don't quite connect type situation. So not as a little kid, it really just wasn't on the radar screen as a pre-adolescent.
Yeah, I
think that's pretty common.
I think it's common too. I always wondered, we interview different people, and often for men, it's when they have children or they get into that, and that's just interesting.
So, wow, man, so many different ways to go on this. So with where was it going? I don't know now. We'll go back a little bit. So in college, I'll tell this story. My best friend, I had a car that semester and was driving him to the eyeglasses place, and he was getting a new pair or something or the other. What do you do when, the eyeglasses store? I didn't wear glasses at the time. You put on frames and you try them on just because you're, killing time. And I remember he was standing next to me, and I put on this pair and I looked in the mirror and it was like, oh, and his name is Kelrick. And he's like, oh, man, you look just like your dad, my adopted dad. And I'm like, wow, that's sort of weird considering I'm adopted. And I was never, a secret about adoption, but that's not the thing you lead in, hey, I'm adopted. And he's like, no, you're not. And I'm like, yeah, I am. I said, he goes, no, you're not. I was like, yes, I am. So we finished, we went back to the dorms, picked up the phone, called my mom and said, here, we talked to Kelrick. They knew each other. And I went to school in Florida, and he talks to her, hangs up, hands the phone back to me, I should say. And I was like, yeah, I'll talk to you later. Bye. No, I don't believe her, because I know her and she'd go along with the joke. You're not adopted. So I did have some resemblance to my adopted father. But I tell you that story that night that I met everybody.
Yeah. I was just going to ask about,
right?
Dude, other than my three sons, I walked in this room. No, I look like people.
Right.
I have this one uncle, I mean, carbon copy. A few weeks later, I had one of my first cousins organize a first cousin meetup. They've been, like I said, they've been great. And so this one uncle, I meet his, so with there being 7 of them, there's sort of a long age, gap between the aunts and uncles. And so this one uncle, he's only 6 years older than me. And so his kids are, they're younger, they're about 30. And, there's all these people, and I don't know about y'all, but in those large groups, if I'm not the one in charge of an event or a meeting, if I'm in charge, I can work a room, I can, be there. But when I'm just attending, dude, put me back to the wall and let me just observe, because I'm just, out of place. And so in these large meetups, in fact, my paternal family, they've been like, you sure you can handle this? We're a little overwhelming and we know that. I'm like, no, we're good. But anyway, I sort of step back and I'm just looking and watching and I'm listening. And my uncles, so my cousins, I hear them, it's brother and sister, and they're like, oh, wow, that's just so weird. Because I look just like their dad. And that was just, I mean, wow.
And do you look like your dad?
A little bit. I think he has a little more of one side of the family, and I got the Lefebvre side of the family. So back to the French thing, they're all French, with a bunch of German in them as well. So, my oldest son looks like my dad.
And then what about,
you look French?
Have you seen pictures of your mom?
So on that night, I saw my first picture. There was a sophomore yearbook picture that I got to see. Now, I'll hold that thought. So that evening, one of my uncles comes up. He goes, look, because at that point I had asked them to keep it under wraps because I hadn't told my parents. And I said, don't, social media. And this uncle pulls me aside and he's like, John, hey, look, I want you to know, I haven't given your name out or anything. I've respected that. But your dad's high school buddies, we all hang out together still. And I let them know we found you and they all want to meet you.
Aw.
Yeah, I was a little weird. I was like, okay, a bunch of guys that went to high school with my dad who's passed away many years ago want to meet.
I have a close high school group. I could see us. We'd be like, we want to meet the kid.
Right. I have a group text with a bunch of people that we either went to middle school and high school together. So yeah, but at the moment I was like, whoa. So anyway, that meeting was organized on my dad's birthday. So that was a couple of months later in November, and up at one of the Hill Country rivers up here. And we met up there. And so a lot of them brought high school pictures to share with me. So it was from there that I got to see more pictures of my mom. And my mom, I saw my dad that night, but I saw pictures of my mom on that evening. So I've seen more pictures of her since then.
And did you see any of them together? I have a picture of my biological parents together at a high school dance.
I did too.
Yeah. It's weird to look at,
It is. I've got one of them on her high school graduation night. So I got quite a few. So one of those pictures, it was her high school graduation night. And there's these 3 couples in it and the names are written on the back. It's no Polaroid. And since, once it went public, the high school that they all graduated with, all of their high school started requesting to be my friend on Facebook. So all these people I've never met. And once you look in their about and they all put the name of the high school, it's like, oh, they're one of them. Okay, got it. And one day, this was in January, this past January, there's this one guy that had befriended me on Facebook that was in this photo. And I do not know why, but I decided to reach out to him. So I sent a message and said, hey, you know who I am in my story. I was wondering, could you tell me anything about my parents? And, like I said, there were, 3 couples in it. And I assumed the guys were the buddies and the girls were the buddies. Assumption I made. So he responds back, yeah, hey, can we get together for breakfast? Sure. So we meet at a restaurant with his wife and he brings pictures as well. Well, come to find out he was best friends with my mom, not my dad.
That's what I thought you were going to say. Yeah. Middle school.
From middle school. So he brings all these old photos. And so back to my mom and what was going on at that time and to her story. I found out that I don't know, I can't say this 100%, but I don't know if she left on her own, was kicked out of the home, but she lived alone in an apartment by herself while she was pregnant with me.
That's
Oh,
sad.
The family started to come between them from what I can tell.
Mhm.
And so she reached out to, she needed some support.
Friends.
So she reached out to this guy. His name is Jon, and he was in the military at the time. So he hadn't been stationed, this is Vietnam era. He hadn't been stationed overseas. He was not too far away, apparently. And he was, in regular communication with her on the phone. And so he's sitting across from me at this restaurant, and he tells me, he goes, I offered to drive back and to drive your parents to Mexico to get married. I'm like, okay. And he goes, but then his mom said, no, you'll go AWOL, and that won't be, you'll get in trouble. And so he backs away from that. Then sitting, right across from me, he goes, then I told her, how about I'm going to marry you and I'm going to give the baby a daddy. And he says it that way. And I don't think he had sort of removed himself from the fact that the baby he was going to give a daddy was me.
Yeah, he's telling a story, and it's like, if you're like, hello.
Yeah. So I'm looking at this guy going, you were almost my stepfather.
He's a good friend. He's a good
it really
friend.
sounds like they both had it sounds like a tragic love story, that
Yes.
Romeo and Juliet and weren't it? And maybe that really
affected her.
She has a lot of pain still from that, but yeah. I think
sad. And being
oh, I don't know what I was.
No, I was gonna say Sarah and I are on the same page. I think don't ignore that this is gonna go further, because also you're in this town. I'm thinking all these people posting and texting you, she's hearing about this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, my group's tight. I can imagine she's got to be hearing about this.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, the story isn't over. I don't think.
Yeah.
I think she just needs some time to process. It really hasn't been that long. It's less than a year that you reached out, and it wasn't you that reached out. It was the group of people like that. Maybe
that would be freaky.
Wasn't what she was expecting, and so maybe that you would, maybe you writing to her would be a different scenario than getting a text from a group.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff at play, I'm sure.
There is. I did at Christmas time. So you guys have probably done, seen it, and there's lots of sites out there and information about, how do you write that letter? What do you do? And so I did my research, looked through that, and so some of them, if I'm still a secret, and I'm guessing I am. So she did get married in 1989 for the first time. She's still married to him. And, I wonder if she ever told him. And so there's, information out there about how do you write that in case somebody else, gets the letter or the card or something, and you keep it sort of, clandestine, but yet you're getting the information. So I did that on a Christmas card at Christmas time. So the idea was, hey, you went to high school at such and such, and I believe you know my parents, and I was just looking for information. Any stories you could tell me about them? Here's my contact information, if you would be willing to do that. So I didn't hear anything back on that.
I think the clandestine way is not, you make me laugh, because if Sarah and I have been doing our Enneagrams, and I think you'd be a 5 because you're doing all the research, like you're a 1, you're a 1. That makes sense too, because you're doing all the research, how to do everything. And I'm just like,
well, that might just be an adoptee thing.
Or an adoptee thing, but I'm thinking, well, to do it right, like I'm just thinking, write the letter to her. And, I think you should just write your feelings to her, and maybe a letter that she has to sign for, type of thing. Or I don't know how you do that.
I don't know. Maybe give it a minute and see.
group project right now.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Wow. Well, will you please keep us posted? Because I know that this isn't done yet, and send us some pictures of your
I know.
family. I really want to see them.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
So,
and where are your boys? Are they in town?
No, one is so one is getting rather serious with a young lady, and they are visiting her grandparents, and the other two are at work.
Okay.
Well, we love your energy. You've just been, you have a lot of great storytelling abilities,
Yeah.
and it's been fun to piece this together with you and to know you and kind of watch this through this.
Yeah. Really appreciate you sharing with us, Jon.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I thank you for letting me share it.
Nice.
So just I'll wrap things up. So for my brother and sister and I are getting together tomorrow for the May birthdays. So sort of that first sort of celebrating just us and not the greater family.
Oh,
So
yay.
every day is like a new experience, something new that you never done before. And, it's weird at my age that you're doing all these first time things,
Yes.
but it's been great and it's been good. And you're afraid of that secondary rejection. They've given, no indication that when the honeymoon's over, it's, that's it. But you still have that voice in the back of your head. So to all of the other adoptees that are out there that, you're wondering, should I, pursue, should I do this? That is up to you. Just be prepared when everybody asks, what should I expect? Wow. I mean, the spectrum is this wide, and you should expect something maybe on both ends like me. And just if anybody asks me, would I do it over again? In a heartbeat.
Oh, I like
Aw.
that.
Thank you, Jon.
It is a journey. Thank you, Jon.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me.
And keep us up to date.
I will do that.
Okay, bye.
Bye.